Thank you all so much for being here on this Tuesday night, this intimate Tuesday night. It's always fascinating to see the range of conversations and activations we put on and people's capacity to show up in person. And so I really appreciate where everyone is coming from and coming here in person to have this very real conversation about alchemizing headline anxiety. So, just to start us all off, my name is Andrea Ambam. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the director of programming at More to Talk at Level Forward. And Level Forward is a story driven, impact minded entertainment company. And we produce film, TV, and theater. And we also produce conversations, events, activations that are ignited by story, ignited by the film, TV, and theater that we see all around us. So, this is more to talk about a conversation space. So, I encourage you all to be active in this conversation. I encourage you all to lean in, to ask questions. I'll pose, opportunities for us to engage. And we have some brilliant panelists up here that are going to tell us about their lived experiences, their work in the world, and how they each individually and how we may collectively alchemize headline anxiety. So, without further ado, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself first, Jess.
Everyone. My name is Jez Chung. I use they, them pronouns. I am Korean American. I grew up in the South in Georgia and Texas. I've been in New York for 7 years, and I'm a multidisciplinary artist, writer, and performer mostly. And I released a book that came out earlier this year.
Woo!
Hi, everyone. My name is Carlita Victoria. I am also from the South. Oh, yeah.
Southern
I am
girls.
from, yes, sir, that's right. I'm from North Carolina. Yeah, I'm from North Carolina. My pronouns are she, her. And while I am from North Carolina, I lived in New York for 10 plus years, and now I'm kind of back and forth with most of my home base being in North Carolina. But I'm here like every week. So I'm grateful to be here. I am the founding executive director of Darkness Rising Project.
Thank you both so much for being here. I always joke in conversations because I get to program these conversations. And I'm like, anytime there's something I'm really thinking about or that's really bothering me personally, I'm like, oh, we're going to do a more to talk about that. So I can get solutions and figure out ways to sleep at night. And headline anxiety it's just something that has been, I know it's not unique to me, has been on my heart and mind for a while now. I'm interested with folks in the audience. Has anybody else been experiencing some headline anxiety, some overwhelm by the news cycle? Yeah, so I was looking this up, and there's a therapist named Dr. Stephen Stosny, and he coined the term headline stress disorder in the wake of the 2016 election. And you can think about every time there's an election year specifically, the amount of news that we are inundated in. And I think it kind of reminds everyone of our, not only our personal responsibilities, but our societal responsibilities, our interpersonal, our global responsibilities. And so there can be a lot of pressure. And also, who here got to see Inside Out 2? Oh my gosh. Okay. So Inside Out 2, allegedly for the kids, but the adults were having a great time. Oh, yeah. Because what an amazing way to kind of visualize all of what's happening inside of us internally. Can we start maybe with Inside Out 2 and about like the processing of emotions? And I know, Jez, you were so excited when you mentioned this was being ignited by Inside Out 2. So can we start there? What did you just feel after watching and seeing a young Riley kind of go through the emotions of preteen, puberty?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, when Andrea reached out about this, I was like, I love Inside Out 2 so much. I watched it in theaters, not once, not twice, but 3 times, bringing different friends. I was like, you have to come see this movie. And I'm a writer performer, so I look at films through both the lens of writing and performances, and on every spectrum, it was so spot on. And I think one of the reasons why I became a writer and performer is because I just don't see a lot of things out there that I resonate with. Being queer, being non-binary, being autistic, being ADHD, being neurodivergent, disabled, all these, because of my lived experiences, most movies, yes, they speak to core human truths. I guess that's the movies that I relate to most are the ones that speak to core human truths and really get into it. And so Inside Out too, even though it was, the lead is a white girl going through puberty, but because the writers really got it. They really understood what it's like to experience anxiety, to experience all these different emotions. And I'm sure we'll get into this, but there were so many parts where I felt like that is exactly what it's like to rewire your subconscious. And they have all these visualizations. And do you all remember the brainstorm scene? When it's just like, that's how it feels like in my mind every single day, all the time. And so I just felt represented in a way that I haven't before. And I think it was just done really well in terms of accepting your emotions without judgment, which I'm sure we're all on that journey, right?
Absolutely. I loved Inside Out too. I was so happy to see something that was so well written that felt like it was about me, even though I'm an adult. I felt absolutely seen. As soon as anxiety showed up, I was like, "Hey, I know you. I
Hey,
know
girl."
you, girl. That's me." And it was such a breath of fresh air to feel like, oh, this is about my lived experience, not only as a child, but as an adult. And so while it was difficult to watch someone else go through what I feel like I've been through and to be rooting for them and like, oh, no, don't do that. But at the same time, like, well, girl, what are you doing? Like, and so it's easier. It can be easier to watch and then identify, oh, well, these are the choices that should be made. But when it's in my own life, it becomes very difficult and it becomes overwhelming to experience all of those emotions at once and then have that overarching theme of anxiety just like take hold of your life. And it has felt like that so many times for me, and then I've had to hone in and regain control of my life so that I am not just a bubble of anxiety. And so I really enjoyed being able to watch and identify some of my own behaviors and how I can rework some of those patterns in my own life.
I love both of what you said because, when we talk about, I love forward when we're talking about story, we're talking a lot about sometimes fictional distance. And when it's like not us and when it's someone else and like the distance of the screen and all these things that allow us to kind of process and reflect without feeling too judged or too vulnerable or too on the spot. And also watching Inside Out 2 a couple of times. I remember after the first time sitting with my girlfriend and being like, oh, what emotion do you think is in the driver's seat of your life? Because there was, Riley has joy in her driver's seat, but when you go into her dad, there's anger. And I think her mom was maybe kind of led by sadness. And so it just allowed for kind of these really full conversations about our emotions and our relationship with our emotions, to have a candid conversation based off watching a Disney Pixar animated film. And so I'm excited for that kind of prompting and thought to happen here. I want to start with you, Jess, because you mentioned this way to change. And a lot of your work in the world is about how our personal liberation can aid collective liberation, how moving through our emotions, moving through unlearning, unpacking, all those different things can then aid the collective. And I'm just interested in how you came to that journey as an artist and as an activist in the world. And then also if you could talk to us a little bit more about the radical possibilities that kind of exist within first beginning with the personal.
Beautifully put, especially the radical possibilities part, because That's really what story and films and art can do. It expands our sense of imagination. And I write in my book about how one of the biggest symptoms of oppression is a suppression of our imagination. These systems don't want us to imagine a different world. They want us to stay limited and stay in these boxes and stop ourselves from changing the systems, because the status quo benefits from people just accepting, the status quo benefits from us accepting things in defeat and feeling despaired. And so I came about this journey because first of all, I've never identified as an activist, and I think I've just become an accidental advocate because I have been really loud about my experiences. And with all the intersections that I live within, I have felt alone, excluded, dismissed, invalidated, abandoned, forgotten, I felt all of that my entire life. And I also have experienced, my first panic attack was when I was 7 years old. So I have been experiencing anxiety, and then I started experiencing symptoms of depression when I was 12, 13 too. So I've lived with this my whole life. And it's not just I get sad sometimes. I'm no, if we're going to be real, I've dealt with suicide ideation my whole life. And art has been the way, my portal for me to understand how can I build a world in which I'm safer, in which the people I love are safer and they're not under attack. How can I build a world in which queer and trans people are not under attack? When we have equal rights, how can I build a world in which we are able to be honest about our feelings and have conversations like this all the time? And so I think it was just my curiosity, and I come actually from the world of advertising. I was a copywriter. And then, and I was a strategist too. I was doing a lot of stuff in advertising. And then when the pandemic hit, that's when I really had all these existential questions of who am I? What am I doing with my life? Am I actually being of the highest service possible to collective good? Am I actually using my gifts, the innate gifts that I have? Do I even know what my gifts are? Do I understand my power? And am I using it to the fullest ability? Because I don't think we can afford not to right now. And we can't, a lot of people say, there's too much going against us to try. I say there's too much at stake not to try. We just have to keep trying. And so I tried my way into writing a book. I tried my way into joining a theater company. I tried my way into modeling and acting, all these things, because I just kept following my intuitive pull of how can I, it's not even about being better. How can I be as true to myself as possible? Because the world in which I want to live is one where everyone gets to show up fully. So I have to do that myself if I want to build that world, right?
Wow.
Yes. My grandpa was a preacher, just FYI.
Yes.
That's why I get really
Yes, he was. I mean, there's so much I want to say there, but I want to, there was a part you mentioned at the beginning about, the oppressive powers that be wanting us to be in the despair. And it's the reason why I think mental health conversations are so important. And, this is not a revolutionary idea. There are so many critical thinkers and thought leaders before us who talked about their self-preservation as an act of political warfare. That's Audre Lorde. And so when I hear you say, I'm investigating these things deeply and internally and asking myself big questions about my role in the world, thinking about that as an act of political warfare, and when we each are able to kind of show up as our best selves, meaning are not overstimulated, super anxious selves that the world wants us to be in, because the world is so overstimulating and so anxiety inducing. So to be able to find a sense of calm and peace inside of that is, it's an act of resistance. It's a small part in the large acts of resistance that need to take place. So, yeah. Carlita, you have, as an actor and founding executive director of Darkness Rising, first of all, I would love for you to tell people about Darkness Rising as an organization, but then also for you, what was the origin story of being an actor, working in the entertainment industry, and then starting an organization at the intersection of arts and mental health, which I see so many through lines between you all, because I think about the stigma that exists in the entertainment industry, just around like, keep going, and it's hard, and you got to muscle through and be strong through. And so to, candidly be bold and say, this is what I'm dealing with, I need support, we need to support each other, that's huge. So how did this happen?
Yeah, we're about to get into it.
Get into it, girl.
About to get into it. So I am a performer. I went to school for dance, and I always knew that I would be a dancer. What I didn't know is that I would have a nonprofit. That was never the plan. I also became an accidental advocate. I became an accidental activist. These were never my initial plans, but through my journey, I found that this is exactly where I need to be. And so I was touring, I was doing regional performances, and I was actually in a show, and trigger warning, I am going to mention suicide. And I was actually in a show, and things were going so well in my career. Things were up. I mean, I was booked. I was having a great time in the performance industry and on stage. And then I was in a show, and I felt empty. And so I was living every day on stage, living my best life. But every day after the show, after I would take that bow, I would go home and I would seek out ways to end my life. And I would keep staying because I thought, well, if I end this, what will my cast say about me? Which is a wild, that's what? And I kept staying because I didn't want to disappoint anyone else. But I'm thankful that I stayed. But through that journey, I realized I was like, oh, I can't keep doing this. This is not gonna work for me. But there was so much stigma, and I know we're gonna get into this a little bit later. There's so much stigma for me as a Black woman. There's so much stigma for me as a woman who is bisexual. So much stigma as a performer. So much stigma, and I was so embarrassed. I was so ashamed to reach out for help. It took me years. The point that I'm talking about right now, that was my breaking point. And when I finally got to that point, I decided I am going to reach out for help, and I started therapy. I got an emotional support animal. I started meds, and I came to a place where I was able to maintain for a while. But what I realized was that it's not just me. I'm not the only one who's going through this. And even though that journey is so lonely and you absolutely feel alone, what I realized is that when I finally opened up and started speaking about it, there were so many performers who were experiencing this. I got so many DMs saying, oh, I have also I've been experiencing suicidal ideation for years. I got so many DMs from other Black women saying, I just feel so pressured. I feel like I have to be the nurturer. I feel like I can't go on. Thank you for sharing your story. And because of those DMs, because of all of the reach outs, because of people were reaching out to me asking for resources, I'm not a therapist. And I thought, well, I don't have these resources, but somebody does. And they need to be culturally competent resources. And so how can I use my partnerships, my connections, the people that I know, the artists that I know, how can we create something that's gonna help people who look like me, help people who experience the same thing that I'm experiencing? And that was the birth of Darkness Rising. And I decided that I don't want anybody else to have to fight to find a therapist. I was denied services. When I started reaching out for therapy, I was denied services again and again and again because I was told that I was a liability, because when I reached out for services, I said, I am suicidal. And they said, can't help you. We're going to have to put you on a list. It's going to be a few months. I said, I don't know if I'll be here in a few months. I don't know that. And it just, I don't want anyone else to go through that. And so I started Darkness Rising to start working with culturally competent resources to provide them for people who look like me, because I said, nope, nobody else on my watch, not on my watch.
Thank you so much for sharing that journey and for speaking so candidly, for the trigger warning, and for speaking so candidly about suicide and suicidal ideation, because you're right. We have these conversations in silos, or we keep them private, and then we are all like, oh, all of us are experiencing this. All of us are having a hard time, and it can relieve so much around being alone, and feeling isolated. You mentioned stigma, and I want to stay there with both of you, because Jez, online, you are very open about your mental health journey, the ups and the downs, the successes, and all of that. And part of starting Darkness Rising was breaking that stigma. What has the journey been of just talking more candidly about mental health online? And how do you think talking candidly about mental health online allows people to know that they can participate in the world and still be dealing with their internal world as well?
I resonate with so much of what you said. And first of all, I talk about the things I talk about online for me, because I need to process. I'm such a verbal processor that I need to talk things out. I need to hear myself say things. And that actually cuts a lot of the SI and anxiety down, because I say it out loud and then I'm like, okay, it's not this scary secret that I'm holding anymore. And it's about, I want to live in a world where people can be more honest. So again, I'm just going to show up in the ways in which I want other people to show up too, and hopefully give that permission. But one, it's for me, so it's not all in my head. But then two, a lot of people do end up reaching out and saying, like, I get so many DMs saying, you helped me realize I'm autistic. You helped me realize more about my neurodivergence, because I share a lot of resources about that. And that has been a huge part of my SI, that I'm like, oh, I'm so different. I didn't know this for most of my life, because I didn't realize I'm autistic until I was in my late 20s. And so the stigma, I think, comes from us just saying, oh, no, we have to put on a facade. We have to perform. We have to fake. And the thing for me is that I've never been able to be fake like that, for better or worse. Like, growing up, I can't. I literally can't. In bad scenarios too, where I'm like, I probably shouldn't have said that. Or people will one of my autistic traits, I take things very literally. Yeah. So if someone says something, I'm like, oh, I answer it literally, and they're like, no, that's not. And I'm like, oh gosh, I just made this awkward. So I guess it's just processing out loud so that I can alchemize, because the alchemy is in the processing, is in saying, oh, you experience this too? Okay, why is that? And I write so much in my book about how depression, I read this book by Johann Hari called Lost Connections, Why We're Depressed and How You Can Find Hope. Completely changed my entire view on depression. And I'll summarize the book for you right now. It's basically, depression is a symptom of disconnection. Disconnection from nature, from community, from a sense of self, from a sense of purpose. All of these things that we have a right to as people, right? But then all systems of supremacy, capitalism, et cetera, all these things keep us isolated in a silo and tell us we have to be, not only that, they're isolating us, but then putting unrealistic standards and saying you have to present as someone who is just so polished and perfect all the time. And that is impossible standards to live up to. So I just try to constantly, no matter, even if, sure, like I celebrate the wins too, but I actually have a jar at home called my win jar. It's a mason jar like this big, and I put sticky notes. I write on sticky notes every time I'm proud of myself for something. Some of them are like, oh, okay, my book was released, I fulfilled a lifelong dream. But a lot of them are things that nobody would ever know how to name. Like, I things that have to do with my journey with complex PTSD, like I let myself be loved. I asked for help. I went to go seek. I've been in ketamine therapy for a couple years for my depression. Like I went to go seek help. Things that nobody would know how to name except me. So I just try to verbalize. I'm very big on verbalizing the things that are not often talked about.
And it's a huge part of, again, breaking the stigma of letting people know that. I think it's like when you live boldly as your authentic self, Toni Morrison says the function of freedom is to free somebody else. And when you live boldly in your truth, and then other people know, oh, I can do that too. Like I can just be myself and I can try new things. And Carlita, I'm wondering if you could talk more about specifically focusing on Black and Brown communities and darkness rising and around that stigma breaking. You know, when you mentioned Black women coming to you and being like, I'm tired of being the nurturer. Oh my gosh, that's so real. And I have a whole separate tangent about, you know, just where we're at as a country right now and how often election years elicit, specifically from Black women, this kind of role or superhero kind of mule of the world. So could you talk a little bit more about the stigma breaking for Black and Brown communities?
Absolutely. I resonate with what you said so much. As Black women, we are often asked and tasked with doing the labor. And it's emotional labor, it's educational labor, and I don't always feel like doing that. And so many of us don't always feel like doing that, but we feel pressured to do so. And we feel we are often asked to stand up for other communities, and then we feel like, well, who's standing up for us? And I think that becomes really difficult as a Black woman. There's so much stigma. There's so much stigma within our community about reaching out for support, specifically when it comes to therapy. I remember growing up, you know, we would watch Living Single or you know, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and you might see somebody saying, oh, I'm going to therapy, ha, 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 oh, you're crazy, or using, you know, these really heavily stigmatized words, and that was just the norm. It was just the norm for it to be on TV that if you're going to therapy, put on some sunglasses and hide, like, do not be seen. And that's what we grew up with, you know? And so as you're growing up with that, that's just what you come to believe. And it's not just that, it's these systems of oppression that perpetrate these beliefs that if we're going to therapy, there must be some sort of weakness. And so what I try to impress upon people is I'm going to therapy before there's a problem. I'm going to therapy when nothing's wrong. You know, when things are good, when I'm feeling top of the world, guess what, girl? You just never know. You go to therapy because it's maintenance. It's just like taking walks to maintain your health. It is daily maintenance. And if I could go to therapy every day, I probably would. But
Therapist's like, you again?
right, like, tired of me. But because these systems of oppression, they can, I mean, daily when we go to work in corporate America, when we're just on the subway and we hear these conversations with people using language that is absolutely abusive, those are the things that can stick in your head, right? So we have to daily combat and we have to fight against those things. So as a Black person, as a person of color in this world, it becomes that much more important for me to take care of myself and to seek out culturally competent care, to seek out a Black therapist who understands my hair journey, who I do not have to explain anything to. Because I'm not going to therapy and I'm not spending an hour explaining to you why I was mad that she touched my hair. I don't want to do that. So it becomes really important for me to try to create these resources for people so that we don't have to keep, because every day is a fight. Every day is a fight for our lives, and so why should we also have to fight for resources? And then when it comes to being a performer in this world, there's all of these unrealistic standards, just like you were mentioning, all these unrealistic expectations that we are going to be triple threats and that we're going to excel in every area of our craft. And so if I post online that I have PTSD, will I get booked? What will producers say? when I go to the next audition, I know they saw my post. Will they want to hire me? Will there be some type of bias against me because they know I take meds? Because I'm very vocal about that on my Instagram page. Is that going to be a problem? So that was scary. That was terrifying for me. So before I started speaking publicly, I had to talk with myself. I said, "Okay, girl, this is what we're doing, and we're going to make peace with it. And anybody who's not okay with it, if they don't want me in their show, that doesn't matter, because I have to be my truest, most authentic self." And me being able to publicly state on my social media, I have PTSD, I live with depression, I live with anxiety, that opens up more spaces for other actors to do the same thing, to be able to call out of a show and say, I need a mental health day. There are things happening with my mental health, and I need to step away from this show. And creating those spaces just becomes that much more important, because I remember being in a show and being afraid to walk away because I had just gone through something so traumatic while I was in the show, and the show would not release me. And I just stayed. And I look back a few years later, and I say, well, Carlita, you'll never do that again. The next time, if anything ever happens to you that is traumatic, and you ask to leave, and they say no, you're just going to get up and leave. You're going to walk out of the show. Contract is over. And I want to empower more people to walk away when there are abusive and harmful systems that are telling us, you're a performer, the show must go on. It does not have to go on. Not with me. You can call somebody else who didn't just experience something very traumatic. And so that's what I want to continue to remind myself, and to continue to remind my people.
As you were talking, I was thinking about, we kind of talked about masking or pretending or the performing or the idea that you must go on, and how that only exacerbates our mental health or whatever we're dealing with at the moment. And I've been thinking a lot about headline anxiety, and how part of it is just the idea, we're getting news in new ways. Now news is, it's a notification on your phone. It can be the first thing you see. It's in your email. It's in the apps. It's on your Instagram. It's on your TikTok. It's on your Twitter. If you have an Apple Watch, it's dinging on your wrist. It's like everywhere. And so there's not a lot of time to process information. We're just being inundated with information and not actually being able to do anything with it. And so I've heard you both already name part of the alchemy as like receiving the information, receiving the feeling, having the feeling, and then getting it out in some way, and not sitting with it and not pretending, and what that can do to even just your own sense of self, and giving yourself the agency to live in that. So thank you so far for that alchemy. I want to open it up for audience questions as well. I do have one question that I'm going to ask while you all are simmering with your questions or thoughts. I want to talk a bit about joy. Because, joy, in Inside Out 2, Joy is working very, very hard, which I love to see. I'm like, is my Joy working that hard? I'm like, girl, step it up, right? I'm like, you need to be working. She's working hard. And she sometimes is like, I think part is Joy is realizing that she needs the other emotions, right? And in Inside Out 1, we saw her realize that part of sadness, that she needed sadness to also experience the fullness of joy, to understand it. And then in Inside Out 2, we see her having to work with anxiety and really kind of understand what anxiety is. And she has this moment, a kind of defeated moment, where Joy says, I don't know how to stop anxiety. Maybe we can't. Maybe this is what happens when you grow up. You feel less joy. And I was like, pain, relatability, pain. But so cultivating joy, being in relationship with joy, as you said, every day, it is an active process. So my question for you both is, what is the role of joy in the work that you do in the world, and how do you cultivate it daily?
Oh. I love this, and I love that part in the movie. Yeah. And that anxiety attack scene too, and she's like, you're not needed anymore. Yeah. it was just, that is what it's like. It really comes down to, it's a practice. It's a muscle and it's a practice. And one of my creative mottos is, we get better at anything we practice. You could be terrible at something, but if you're like, I'm a really bad friend, why am I such a bad friend? Practice being a good friend. Or I'm really bad at singing or dancing. Practice singing or dancing every day, and you'll just incrementally get better at anything you practice. Loving yourself. I'm not good at loving myself. Okay, then practice loving yourself every day. So joy, it's so interesting because, I have experienced depression my whole life, but I don't read you take a look at me and I look very there's a lot of sensory joy happening, right? And my whole life, I'm also a very enthusiastic and animated person. So my whole life, people, when they find out I experience severe depression, they're like, you experience it? And it's like, yes, because what's going on inside here is something might be completely different than what I'm presenting on the outside. And I actually, a really life-changing reframe that I thought about while I was writing this book is that, I was so mad at my fear and my anxiety for driving everything, right? Why do I have so many intrusive thoughts? Why? And then I was like, you know what? I am so clever. I am so imaginative, because that's what anxiety is. Anxiety is an overactive use of imagination. If you are anxious, that means you are so good at coming up with so many scenarios. You're so smart. You're brilliant. You're actually fabulously imaginative. You're a world builder. Yeah. You're iconic. You're legendary. So kind of reframing it in that way, because I'm like, why am I writing a horror movie in my head starring me? And so I reframe that. And so now when every single day I get intrusive thoughts. Every single day I have thoughts about why am I like this, or why? And I've also reframed the question, why am I like this, to what do I need? Instead of what's wrong with me, it's what do I need? Because there's obviously something that I need that I'm not getting. And so instead of punishing myself, then, because that's what those thoughts are, why am I like this, punishing? And then I go into, actually, I'm going to accept where I am, and I'm going to what does it look like to be joyful in this state right now? What does it look like to be joyful in my sadness? It's going to look very different than being joyful in your joy, right? But there's always something underlying, and I really believe I'm such a radical eternal optimist that I believe at my core is that sense of joy. I believe at the core I'm joy, and everything else is just fogging it up. So I'm always just trying to clear the windshield wipers, clear the view, and get back to myself. And that's why those self practices and listening to myself is important, because the way in which I listen and relate to myself and love myself is going to be the way I listen and relate and love other people in the world too.
Thank you for that.
I love that. I absolutely love that, and that is so true. So joy has been so important for me too, and I resonate with what you said, because people also look at me and say, "Oh, you're so bubbly, girl. You don't know. You don't know. You don't know what's going on in here. It's a battle. It's a daily fight for joy." But one thing that I keep telling myself over and over is that joy is my birthright. Joy is what I deserve. Rest is what I deserve. Healing is what I deserve. All of these things, they are what I deserve and what I will continue to fight for every day, no matter the situation I'm in. And so in the work that I do with Darkness Rising, there are times that someone will just walk up to me or DM me and tell me the saddest thing that's ever happened in their life, the most traumatic thing. So I just never know when that thing is going to happen, right? And that can have a significant emotional impact on me or my day, or, I make space for people. That's what we do at Darkness Rising. And because we provide free sessions of therapy for formerly incarcerated people, we also hear the stories of trauma, of violence happening during incarceration. And we hear about how difficult that transition is. And so because these are the stories that I hear on a daily basis with people that I know and love, it becomes very hard, sometimes disheartening to hear, right? But that just activates me. that just pushes me forward, and that reminds me, well, you know what? This person needs some joy in their life too. So joy has become so vital for me. That's one of the reasons why we always incorporate the arts into our programming. I mean, as an artist, I wasn't gonna have any type of program without some dancing in it. I wasn't gonna have any type of program without some songs, some music, because music has changed my life. Music has saved my life so many times. And so it's so important for us to have these moments where we're on stage or off stage sharing cultural dances, where I teach, these African dance classes to our community members, and it brings people joy and it brings people back to our culture, to our community. And for me, individually, I remind myself of my joy by twerking. I will hop on the internet and twerk in a heartbeat. And I decided, because, when you run a mental health nonprofit, people expect you to be zipped up, but that's never been me. I'm just not her. I'm just not that girl. So I'm a dancer, I'm gonna be in my house twerking for my dog. I'm going to be, just enjoying I'm going to find ways to enjoy my life. I have to. It is my right to do so. And so if it's that, or if it's singing, or if it's just finding community like we're doing tonight, if it's making space for someone else who needs to have a conversation, those are the things that I need to do, and I need to find a way to do that on a daily basis. And so I have these conversations with my therapist, and she's like, what did you do this week that helped you smile? And I'm like, wait, I got something, because she holds me accountable. She holds me accountable for finding that joy. And I also have a mason jar where I like your idea though. I like your idea with the mason jar. But I have a mason jar where I will put in something every day that I'm thankful for. And I've been slacking, so thanks for the reminder. So I'll put in something every day that I'm thankful for. And then I also have a mason jar that's like not as happy, right? And so I have a meltdown corner. In my house, I have a meltdown corner. It is a really nice, soft memory foam pillow and some other pillows in a room that gets really dark. And so whenever I'm feeling it, I'll go into my meltdown corner. I will absolutely release, and then I will go and I will look at something that I'm thankful for, and then I'll have my dance party. Because after my meltdown, we gotta release, we gotta come back. And so those are the things that have been helping me.
Oh my gosh, I love this, the practice of joy showing up in both of those answers. And thank you for the meltdown corner and the mason jars and all of that. Any audience questions before we wrap up? Audience questions or thoughts too, if you just want to share some love with our panelists. I always love moments like that as well. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for your insights and personal experiences. How do you find, just in light of the topic here, how do we go from the individual healing that we're doing, from the ways in which we are sharing that with others, to impact in the political sphere, right? We're talking about headlines, we're talking about this election that is on its way, and so much of the feelings that people are having individually regarding isolation is being exacerbated by our current political landscape. How do you find right now folks move from just the self-care practice to the community and political care practice, so we're not just reducing joy to being an individual experience?
I love that. I'm going to say the question again for the camera. And the question was, how do we transmute from the individual healing self-care practices and grow that into community care, political care, healing, action?
Sure. So, first of all, that's an amazing question. Community care is the only way. individual care, we need that, but community care is the only way that we actually make change. Community care is the only way that we actually organize. And so I spend a lot of time in community circles, in meetings with other organizations like BEAM and organizations like Borealis, who leads Communities Transforming Policing. And we spend a lot of time in community organizing. And when I say organizing, we are talking specifically about the election and how it has an impact not only on us as individuals, but it has an impact on our entire organizational staff. Therefore, it has an impact on our beneficiaries. It has an impact on our entire community. And so now, what can we do as individuals to care for our collective community? And so sometimes that might look like us creating a specific wellness resource or a specific wellness space where the community can come virtually or in person to just talk and discuss the feelings that we're having surrounding the anxiety that so many of us are experiencing surrounding the election. Or it might be a gathering of resources from various organizations talking about what we can all offer our community members. We'll often bring a therapist into the space to talk with people about specific tools that we can use as we enter this election cycle. We also have talked about the ways that we can, when we're seeing these headlines, what do we need to do to take action? And then also, what do we need to do to rest? Because we have to both rest and we have to take action. We can't choose one or the other, or we're not making change. So those are some of the things that we have spoken about. And we also, in one of our most recent meetings with the Health Equity Collective, we spoke about what is your election day plan? So if your election day plan is to physically go that day and vote, then what does your election day plan look like in terms of care? What is your aftercare plan? And so for some of us, for some people, they are heading out of town, and I love that for them. I wish that was me. Some people are voting early, getting out of town, and taking care of themselves in that way. Some people are spending the election day in their specific communities or with family. And so everyone, I think we should all have and create our own individualized election day plan that we can create within our community. And so those are some of the ways that we've been working on our collective care.
I love that.
Such a good question. There's so many thoughts that come up. One being, there's this chart by Deepa Iyer, Deepaiyer, called the Social Change Ecosystem Map. And seeing that map changed my life because I've gone through a lot of trial and error where I've been very vocal online for like a decade now. And at first, I really just tried to be an advocate for everyone because my hyper empathy is like, I know what that feels like because I, again, know what it's like to be on the outskirts in so many ways. And so I tried to speak up for everyone and I burnt myself out. And I was like, this is not sustainable. And also I need to, it's about, I guess I need to, I made this distinction of specifying where I want to make my impact. And so the map has all these things like, frontline workers, there's where people who are protesting and organizing in the streets, doing jail support, doing mutual aid. And then there's the storytellers, because we need storytellers for the revolution. We need healers, weavers, yes. We need healers. We need all these different people. And so I looked at that and I was like, wow, I was trying to do everything because, again, I relate too, as a Korean woman, as someone who is socialized as a woman, as someone who comes from Korean immigrants, I want to do everything. I want to take care of everyone. And so one, like specifying my role, I think helped, and realizing, okay, this is my lane right here, writing and performing, writing stories that help heal me and create the world I want to live in. And then another thought that comes up is I have thought about and written about justice a lot. And there's so many synonyms to justice, right? Equity, liberation, collective care. But one thing I think we collectively haven't grasped is true justice is a process of deep, deep listening. Because when you are listening to people saying, hey, when disabled people are saying, don't leave us behind, when incarcerated and formerly incarcerated people are saying, hey, we need to abolish prisons and police, when trans people are saying, hey, our siblings are being murdered and we need proper health care, we're under legislative attack. When all of these people are saying these things, when you really listen and you change your feed and you're really tuning in and you're consuming art from queer, disabled, neurodivergent, black, brown people, and you're really taking it in, I believe that you if you're really listening, how could you not be changed by that? And so then when you're changed, then for me, I was changed by that. Then I started changing my entire world, the spaces that I would take part in, where I put my money, who I support, all these things. And then my world now is completely different than it was a few years ago, just because I've been practicing deep listening. So I think it's so important to maintain that intersection, but it's echoing what you said. It's both. We have to take action and we have to rest so that we can create momentum to continue taking action.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. We'll take one more here.
Yes, so I understand that both of you come from like artistic backgrounds and are in arts spaces. How much has art caused you anxiety? So the thing that is supposed to bring you joy, and how have you transmuted it back to bringing you joy from anxiety? Does that make sense?
It makes so much sense. I'm going to repeat that question. As two people who are in the arts, how much anxiety has art caused you? And how have you transmuted that anxiety back into joy or another emotion that you can work more proactively with?
I'll say for me, the art has never caused me anxiety. It's the additional thoughts, and it's the worrying about perception. It's the worrying about will it reach people? It's all the additional thoughts. Because so when I find myself veering into that, then I just go back to no. It's the art. It's the thing that needs to come out of me. It's the story that I want to channel. Something life-changing that I learned from actually a very traumatic acting course. The whole acting course was very traumatic because it was led by this straight white man who was really aggressive, and I was not gelling, and it was not culturally competent at all, at all. But the one thing I got from it was Martha Graham, choreographer, said to fellow choreographer Agnes DeMille, your job as an artist, and I'm paraphrasing, your job as an artist is not to judge your work as good or bad. Your job as an artist is just to keep the channel open. And so that I just go back to that every time when I'm like, oh, I'm so anxious. Then I'm like, no, let me be an instrument. Let me be a channel. Let me get out of my way, because when I get out of my way, then I let the story come through me. Then I let the words come through me. And before any speaking engagement I do, I always write in my journal, may I be an instrument. May I get out of my own way. May whatever needs to be said be said. It could be said by anyone. I'm just choosing to be the vessel. I'm here because Andrea chose me to be the vessel and to have this microphone, but I'm speaking from, I feel like my best work and my best art and my best messages comes when I'm channeling from collective energy.
Preach, preacher.
Yes. I do feel similarly in that I haven't felt like it's the art that causes me anxiety. I felt like it's my head doing things that I don't like. And so I'll talk a little bit about my own lived experience. I have always had aims to be on Broadway. Not always. I started having aims to be on Broadway maybe about 10 years ago. And in that journey, what I found was that the more I listened to other people and the more I thought about what their perception was of me, the more anxiety became such a strong force in my life. And so in the beginning of my career, I was bold and excited and so joyful and so hopeful because I wasn't listening. I wasn't listening to anybody. I wasn't listening to any intrusive thoughts. I was just enjoying the ride. And somewhere along that journey, anxiety took hold of the wheel, just like an Inside Out 2. And I would go into auditions, and during those auditions, my voice would completely just leave. When I say leave, I mean it would be like I was hoarse. And I could have just, I would have just warmed up right before that. 5 minutes ago, came from another room, warmed up, sang perfectly, walked into the audition, no voice. Left the audition, wept, went into another warm-up room, sang it perfectly. And I mean, that happened for so many years. It's been heartbreaking. And it only just stopped about 6 months ago. Wow. It has been one of the most difficult things in my life. And when I say I tried everything, I mean all types of therapy. I was looking for a hypnotist, prayer. I mean, any medication, anything that I could think of. I went to workshops and just so many different things that I tried, and nothing was helping because it was all in my head. And until I could get it out of my own head, I could not walk into a room and just perform. And something that a casting director told me has stayed with me for years. She said to me, Carlita, your best asset is your joy. That's what you have. And yes, there's so many different levels of talent that a person can share. But what I have to offer is my joy. What I have to offer is my story. And so now when I walk into a room, what I focus on is I just want to tell my story. I just want to share my joy. It doesn't matter. I mean, it matters if you get it. It doesn't matter that much, though. I mean, I would love to have a job. Great. But when I walk away from this room, I want to leave feeling joyful. I want to leave feeling hopeful. I want to leave feeling like I told my story, I shared my story, and bam, I slayed and I enjoyed the ride. That's what I want to leave with. And so I take that with me in every room that I go to. And sometimes I succeed, and sometimes that comes back, and sometimes my voice completely goes. So it's a journey that I am to this day still on. And it's not just my voice. It has happened when I've been dancing. I have a degree in dance, and I have walked into rooms and not been able to find a single movement, which is outrageous. And then left the room, been completely fine. And that anxiety I have felt it try to take hold, but I refuse to let that be my story. And so it is so important to me that I tell my story and let it be one of joy.
Thank you for pointing out the ongoing journey too. And just to say, both of you said it's in my head, which is true, and it's part of it, but also I've been thinking a lot about human beings as animals, and whether we are in an environment conducive to our being. And so when I think about anxiety in the arts, I think about urgency culture. I think about the pressure of the show must go on, of being perfect, and how all of those things are anxiety inducing. And so there are also aspects of the culture that we're in inside of our industries that have to change to allow us to be our best selves. And so part of what we're doing, you mentioned joy is actually the core and getting back to it. And part of it is what do we have to undo that we've normalized inside of the way we move that created all of this pressure and anxiety around an audition room that first told you that you couldn't show up as yourself, and then led to the anxiety, and then having to come back to I actually can, and doing that work. So it's in our heads, but the system, y'all, the systems are, they're doing it to us too. Okay, final question, because I could literally talk to you guys all night. This has been amazing. Thank you so much for just being honest and vulnerable and open and introducing us to the alchemy. So we always end each More to Talk About conversation with what more is there to do, the belief that after you watch a story, after you have a conversation, that window of opportunity where you're ignited starts to go down as soon as it's done. And we want to give people the opportunity to take whatever they got from this conversation and keep it going. And so one offering, one next step, one action, one thing to read. And Jez, for you, I'm thinking about if you can give us some of those hand-on techniques you're talking about.
Okay, so get my book. This Way to Change. It's out on audiobook too, and I have a podcast called Dreaming Different, and it's all about building a world through a neurodivergent lens. But we've been talking about a lot about anxiety in the head, but it's also in the body. Like that's a somatic experience of just freezing. And with complex PTSD and PTSD, there's just so many things like the triggers, emotional flashbacks. Those are completely involuntary a lot of the time. And so I'll share a few tools with y'all that I've just collected over the years from extensive YouTube research and / going to see so many therapists. So one tool is called EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. I learned this from my friend Bianca Gabrielle Wilson. You can go to @Bianca Gabrielle Wilson on Instagram, and she has a lot of demo videos. But basically, can we all just try it? Okay. So there's, it kind of goes through different meridian and energetic points if you're familiar with traditional Chinese medicine. So one of them is here. So you can tap on the side of your, your hand. And you kind of start by saying, even though I feel really worried about what's to come next, I know that I am always protected. And then you can go to the top of your head and throw out another anxiety y'all are feeling. What's an anxiety you have?
I'm worried about just election day and voting and safety and how to vote with my morals.
So even though I'm afraid of the fate, our collective fate, and after the election, I know that there have been so many people who have been through this situations like this before, and they've made it through, and we are equipped and we have strategies to get through. Another one right here. What's an anxiety you have?
Funding.
Oh, okay.
Funding for Darkness Rising is a concern that I have to be able to continue programs.
Oh, okay. So even though I'm worried about not getting enough funding, I know that there's a reason I started this, and I know there are so many people who are supporting me and who are going to support me. Another one is right here on your chest, right above your chest. What's another fear? Throw out a fear. Let's say loneliness. Okay, even though I feel really lonely, I know that there are so many people who love and support me, and I know there are so many people I've yet to meet who are going to love me. And so there's all these different points. You can do it here too, here too. So anytime you feel just stressed, you can, affirm yourself through that, and it somatically helps calm down. Another one is holding your head really still like this, and then put your eyes like in the top left corner and just hold it until you yawn. Until you yawn or you breathe or you exhale, like a deep exhale. And then do it to the other side too. And I have calmed myself down from panic attacks with that tool. And then one more is 3 belly breaths. So you breathe from here, here, and then here. So you breathe sharply, inhaling through the belly, through the chest, and then breathe out. So actually it's 3 breaths. It's belly, chest, exhale. So it's inhale. Let's do that 2 more times. And if you do that laying down, for me, whenever I do that, I end up falling asleep, which is like the ultimate sign of relaxation, right? So those 3 things have like literally stopped me from going down very dangerous spirals before.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love those, and I actually use so many of these activations right before auditions. Right before auditions, I do chest and I do head, and then I just tap all the way down. Yeah, and it helps so much. So thank you. Yeah. What I want to share is something that is for collective care. About a few weeks ago, I went to a reentry simulation. And a reentry simulation is when a person experiences a simulation where we experience what it's like for a person who is transitioning from incarceration back from incarceration. And what that's like is we walk into a room and there are tables spread around, and each table represents court, the grocery store, jail, all of these, a job, all of these different things that a person may experience in society. And you're given a packet of information. You're told who you are. You're told, for me, I was a person who was released after 4 years of incarceration. I left with $30 in my pocket and no ID, right? And so I was then tasked with 15-minute increments to complete a large number of activities, and the activities represent things that we as adults have to do every day. We have to go to work, we have to pay our bills, we have to pay child support, all of these things. Now, in order to pay these bills, you need a job. In order to get to work, you need a car. But when you were released from incarceration, you don't have anything. And many times you don't even have an ID. And so I went through that experience and I learned a lot about my own work for Darkness Rising, because we serve people who have been recently or not recently released from incarceration. And so what I would ask for everyone here is to reach out to your local reentry council. And almost every reentry council offers this as an option. It is a free event that you go to have this live experience, so that we can learn collectively how to care for people as people are reentering. Because the only way that I was successful, that people at this event were successful in reentering, was through collective care, through peer support. That was the only way we were successful. It is so important and so vital that we, as humans, as a society, reach out to understand each person's individual experience and how we can help people throughout their journey.
Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you both so much. Can you please give them a round of applause?
And to Andrea for excellent moderation. Always. Talk about being an incredible listener. Andrea is one of the best listeners I know.
Thank you so much. I'm not lying when I say I could literally sit here for the rest of the night and just be like, so what do you think about? It's a gift. Hold on to these things that have been offered. Please stay connected with More to Talk About. You can go to www.moretotalkabout.com, sign up for our mailing list. We'll be having conversations at the Soho houses monthly, and we do activations and conversations around the city, so please stay connected. And thank you all for being here. Have an amazing night.